All right, so the next step is then to analyze. So you've got your examples and your techniques, but you need to turn that into textual evidence. So that's where our communication pie comes in handy. We've got three parts. We've got the people, the information, and the mode of expression. In the same way, when you're analyzing, you can basically group your techniques into those three segments. Techniques which influence the responder, techniques which somehow shape our understanding of the information, and you have techniques which inform or shape the experience of the text. So, how the information is organized, for example. So, you can see that each of these techniques, I've color coded them according to which segment they belong to. So, repetition is part of the mode of expression, emotive language is part of people, and so on and so forth. Symbolism has got the little asterisk next to it because you can actually use that in visuals as well. And you can see that frames has got two asterisks, which basically is because you've got those two ways of looking at frames. As in boxes, you can see one there. Okay, that would be part of mode of expression. But if you're talking about frames in terms of how close someone appears to be, that's actually going to be part of your P segment. We can see now that we're matching our techniques to these different segments of the communication pie. And there's a reason for doing that because it's actually going to help us with our analysis. In the same way that you've got techniques match different segments of the pie, if you think about it in terms of what language is doing, different segments of the pie are doing different things, then you're going to have verbs that match the different segments of pie. So that means that we can actually have a list of verbs that we can refer to. So the very basic ones for each of these categories, you can see for people, you've got things like persuade, encourage, challenge, confuse, confound, involve. For how the technique shapes the information, has to do with represent, demonstrate, recreate, create, illustrate, all of those kinds of ones. Whereas if it's the mode of expression and how it creates a cohesive text and how it creates our experience of that text, it's going to be things like unite, foreground, connect, represent, reinforce. You'll see that represent here is overlaps, and some of the verbs do overlap. So in the same way, we can then just match our verbs to our real shrimps jump over facts. With it first, you're going to go through these steps, and it's going to seem really long-winded and complicated. But it's one of those things that the more you do it, it's just going to start to become second nature. You'll automatically think, all right, emotive language, P, use one of these verbs. And the cool thing is, if you start to use one of these verbs, it will actually sort of guide your thinking so that you'll start to be analyzing more appropriately. If you can be more specific or more targeted in the verbs that you use, you're going to be more likely to have a more accurate analysis. So the next step is to then compose. And basically, it's just putting all of those things together again. So you can see that pretty much what I've got here is a bit of a formula. And this section of the exam, it's okay to be fairly formulaic. You'll find that as you get better at doing it, you'll break free from that formula or you'll learn to adapt it. But to begin with, you want to be a little bit formulaic to make sure that you've got everything that you need. Because in this section of the exam, you want to be making sure that you're giving the marker what they need to give you the marks. And you want to do that as quickly as possible. When you're answering a question, there's basically three main things that you have to do. Okay, you have to start by answering the question directly. Once you've done that, you're going to use your evidence to support what you've said about the question. And then the third thing you need to do is then link back to the idea from your point in the first sentence. One thing that we have to make sure that we're doing is that it's your point, because rephrasing the question is not an answer to the question. If somebody asks you what your favorite color is, and you say, my favorite color is the color that I like the most, you're not giving them the information that they need. In the same way, when you're answering a question in an exam, you need to tell the marker something from you, something more than just a rephrasing of the question. And we'll look a little bit more at that in a little bit.